hello, hello. Look at this wonderful turnout. It's great to see you all here. We have a pretty packed program, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming. It's my pleasure to kick this little experiment off. We're going to have 5 student presenters. This is something that the American Vacuum Society does every year. Is at one of the conferences, the Thin Films Division has a grad student poster presentation competition. And the students give a talk that is somewhat like a TED Talk. It's more entertaining and informative, and so we're going to try to do that today. So the student presenters today are going to describe their research, but hopefully in a way that's a bit more entertaining than your classic, professional research presentation. All right, so we'll see how that goes. We are requesting audience member participation in this. We'll be voting on the best presentation, who is best able to convey the essence of their research while still making it light and entertaining and funny or informative. So one note of housekeeping is that the sign-up sheets for today's seminar are not the QR codes that you've become accustomed to, but it's your old friend pen and paper over there on the table. So if you have not signed up, please do so that we can continue to get funding for our food. And with that, I will introduce our first speaker today, and then the others we'll see who we've got with their presentation. We'll have Kincaid Graff kick us off.
I am assuming this is all right. I'm assuming, yeah. So I'm Kincaid Graff. I am a 5th-year PhD student in Dr. Claire Zhang's lab, the Electrochemical Energy Materials Lab. My talk is a salt and battery. Which one? Huh? Salt and battery. Yeah, salt and battery. If I could only figure out how the lighter works. I don't think the lighter's working, so I have animation, so it's all right. So a salt and battery, the pursuit of a sodium-ion positive electrode that beats the competition. It sounds ChatGPT generated. It is not. That's just how much I use ChatGPT. So in the introduction, which I'm trying to figure out what the correct button is.
Side button.
The side buttons? Wait, which one? Oh, it's off. Oh, okay. Okay, so as we all know, despite some of the protests of some of the people in this country, the proliferation of renewable energy doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. And this is seen in the rise of electric vehicles. However, when we see this rise in electric vehicles, that makes the materials that comprise these batteries, that stores the energy, very susceptible to supply chain shocks if they are very heavily in demand. So what my research is we're effectively trying to figure out what can we use to replace the contemporary lithium-ion battery that typically uses nickel and cobalt. Well, sodium-ion batteries that typically instead utilize manganese and iron are very likely suspects for complementary technologies due to their very high economic ability. So how batteries actually function is fairly simple to me because I've been studying it for 5 years, and hopefully I can make it simple for you. There are 3 components in every battery, at least these types of batteries. You have the negative electrode, the positive electrode, and the electrolyte. Today, we're going to be studying the positive electrode. And how batteries actually operate is that you have a certain positive ion, say a lithium or a sodium ion, that flows continuously from one electrode to the other. And when a sodium plus charge leaves one electrode, a corresponding electron minus charge must leave via an electric circuit. That generates the electricity that you use to power your phone. If your phone's dead, you effectively just shove electrons back into it by charging it, and you force sodium ions back the opposite way. And whenever a sodium ion leaves, you have to have a corresponding reduction or an oxidation if it's leaving or entering on a transition metal or an ion. So that's typically just a very surface level introduction to sodium ion batteries. But now let's discuss problems facing sodium ion batteries. So a big problem with sodium ion batteries is that they undergo a lot of phase transformations that occur when you pull the sodium out or when you put a sodium in. When you pull the sodium out or put it in, you can undergo very large volumetric fluctuations within those particles that can cause the particles to effectively splinter or to break, and you cannot use that particle anymore. Another one is that specifically for sodium-ion batteries, you have a lot of different structures you can use. So instead of asking like you would with lithium-ion batteries, should I use O3 or a different type of O3? This one you say P2, P3. That's a 6-7 reference in case you didn't get it. The last problem I want to talk about is that when sodium-ion batteries are actually functioning, at the very beginning of them, the interface, you can see the sodium ions are very happy. Well, the electrolytes are also very happy because this interface, which is the surface between the electrode and the electrolyte, is clean. The sodium ions can leave very easily. However, during multiple cycles, you form something that's similar to a film on that interface that then blocks these sodium ions from being able to leave. And as you can see, they are all very upset. So trying to figure out how to avoid the formation of this is very important. So specifically on my research, what I've been doing the past couple of years is what I talked about last time with the structures. We have these certain structures in the sodium-ion batteries that offer certain complements and certain whatever the opposite of a complement is. So for P2, you can ignore what the structures actually are. These are just shorthands. That is very common in the sodium-ion battery literature field. For the P2, it has a very stable structure. You can pull a large amount of sodium out of it and it'll stay P2. However, it offers very low capacity, which is synonymous with energy. The P3 structure has a high capacity, but it struggles with very unstable phase transformations when you pull sodium out and when you put sodium in. So by theoretically combining the two of these structures, are you able, I'm asking the question, am I able to get a combination of these benefits while suppressing the detriments? So how I actually instigated this intergrowth material where you have two phases within the same particle is I simply varied the sodium content in my battery. And what I found was that when I increase the sodium content, I go from a pure P3 structure, this is with X-ray diffraction, to an intergrowth P2, P3, and then a pure P2. And with transmission electron microscopy, I can actually visualize that these phases are growing within the same particle. So it's not just a simple mixture of P3 particles and P2 particles. You're actually having them grow simultaneously as the material is synthesized. And then how this actually translates to your electrochemical performance of your battery is that if you shoot the material with X-rays as you pull sodiums out and put sodium back in, if we were to compare this to the pure P3 material, the biphasic material actually suppresses some of the detrimental low voltage transformations that we see occur within this material. So picture back to that particle exploding. Effectively, what it does is it kind of limits the explosibility of that particle. So compared to the P3 material, if this was your phone, you would see that your phone would have effectively only about 70% of battery after 100 days of using it, if it was pure P3. If it's the intergrowth material, you have simultaneously more energy than the P2 and a much higher stability over 100 cycles. So it's a good phone. It's not going to be very comparable to your lithium-ion battery phones, but it's much better than the P3 battery phone. Now, I kind of mentioned this earlier. When it comes to what is making economical sense for these materials, you want to exclude nickel and cobalt and instead focus on nickel and iron. No, you want to exclude nickel. You want to use iron and manganese because, as you can see, this is the cost per kilowatt hour. If you exclude the nickel and the cobalt, you actually reduce the price of these materials by about 300% or so. So that's, I guess, can you reduce anything by over 100%? You can't, I'm sorry. You can reduce it by a factor of 3. How about that? And what you also want to do is when you make these materials, you want them to have a very good surface morphology. If you have a very high surface area enabled by a very small amount of particles, you will have a very reactive surface that then forms that interface that we do not like. So with contemporary lithium-ion production, what they use is a hydroxide coprecipitation reaction where you have effectively cobalt and nickel reacting with hydroxide. And then if you chelate it with ammonia, you can get these particles that grow into these beautiful spheres. However, if you replace nickel and cobalt with iron and manganese, they break into these very small particles that are uneven, flakily, and not optimized. Now, why is that? Well, I like to see it in the eyes of Among Us. I love Among Us. As you can see with iron manganese, if you're playing as iron manganese and you see ammonia, you say he is the imposter and then you run away. However, if he's the oxalate, I love Among Us, you are happy with him and you will actually combine with him, which is what happens here. So hypothetically, if we use oxalate, we should grow into a big, beautiful sphere. 2 minutes. So how we actually do that in my paper is that we effectively have materials chelated by ammonia, noculate, and oxalate. When we use ammonia and noculate, they're effectively the same when it comes to their actual mean size and surface area. But if we use oxalate, they have much smaller surface area and they're much more uniform in their particle size distribution. And what that does is that with electrochemical impedance spectroscopy, which I won't explain right now, but effectively the bigger the semicircle growth, the larger the growth of that interface that we do not like. As we can see with the ammonia chelated one, it gets a very big semicircle, which corresponds to a very big growth in that interface. And when that happens, the stability of our material is much worse because it blocks sodium from coming out. With the oxalate, it is able to suppress the growth of this interface and maintain a very high cycling stability. So in conclusion, what I effectively have done during my research is I asked myself, if I combine two phases, what do I get? And I get improved cycling performance via sort of synergistic effects between these two structures. And if I'm able to find a more harmonious chelating agent with the ammonia, with the iron and manganese, I'm able to achieve a much more optimized morphology and an increased stability of the cycling of my battery. That's good time. That's good time. That's all I have. Thank you so much.
Okay, now we'll transition to our next speaker, and we're going to save all the questions till the end.
How's everyone doing? This is my mic check. It sounds like it's working. Am I too loud? Well, I was taught how to turn them on, fortunately. I didn't know, but I was given expert instructions. Now,
Still.
Okay, good. I do have two mics. Yes. Hi, everyone. Oh, we're good to go. Yes, fantastic. I'm John. I was here, I can't remember if it was 1 year, 2 years ago. I only got to talk for 1 minute. I'm sure it was one of the best seminars ever. I get to talk 10 minutes this time, so it's going to be 10 times better. And I'm going to talk about the White House and why they're interested in magnets. Turns out magnets have been a big problem. In fact, I would argue that they've been at least in 2025, the #1 trade issue that the US had. And there was a lot of trade issues, as you may recall. Some of you may know that roughly 2 years ago, I got to actually go and work in the White House for a couple months, which was really cool. And I would posit to you, the reason I got to go do that at all was because I cared a lot about this magnet problem that I'm going to tell you about. Not only am I going to tell you about it, the President of the United States is going to tell you about it. There's a little clip I have of him speaking on it, which was really cool for me because this problem has kind of driven my life for the last 6 years. Okay, let's see if I know how to do this. Okay, that worked. So I think for me, the story starts in 2020. And I'm sure you all had the same experience that I did. We went to the store to try to get something that was essential, like toilet paper. You found that you couldn't get it. This was very shocking to me, and I think a lot of us, because we all just assumed at least for me, for the first 24 years of my life, I never had any trouble getting this toilet paper, right? I just assumed it would always be there. And when it didn't, when it wasn't there, I sort of panicked like a lot of us did. And unlike most people, I actually didn't buy a ton of it. I was a little bit late to the party, so I had to scramble around and look. And also around the same time, I was starting a PhD program here, and I was learning about magnets, and I started to realize that we were going to run into the exact same problem that we had with the toilet paper, but with magnets. There's a couple signs that tell you that you're going to have this supply shock problem. One of them is if all of the stuff comes from one place. Okay, and I learned that 95% of the world's magnets were coming from China. They manufacture 95% of the world's magnets. Okay. And I also learned that in the past this had happened. So I said, okay, it's going to happen again. And when I was applying for the White House, I did several interviews. And in all of those interviews, I basically was like, this is going to be a big problem for you guys. You guys want to build a ton of wind turbines. You want to put electric vehicles everywhere. Those use a ton of magnets, and you're going to run out at some point. And at the time, there was a lot of trade tension. The Biden administration was putting trade restrictions on the export of advanced semiconductors on China. And I thought, oh, dude, they're going to cut off the magnet supply. They didn't do that back in the Biden administration, but they did do it last year. Last year, China shut off the world's magnet supply. Why is that a big deal? We're no longer trying to build wind turbines and electric vehicles anymore. But it turns out that magnets are important for a lot more than just that. Here is the most sold car in the United States last year. This is the Ford F-150. I'm going to poll the audience really quick. How many magnets do you think are in the Ford F-150? Just yell an answer. 200, 150. You guys are like very good at this. Yes, that's about how many there are. So there's like, 100 odd magnets that enable the operation of this. I mean, your power steering is magnet driven. If you want to roll your window down and not look like a fool, you got to use magnets. Okay? And so without any magnets, Ford cannot make cars. Ford just dies. It's crazy. So everyone started panicking when China shut off the supply of magnets. Okay? And it became such a big issue that we actually have a clip of the president speaking on it. I hope this works. This is my first time putting a video in a slide.
Everybody says, so what does that mean? Magnets. If China refused to give magnets because they have a monopoly of magnets, because they were allowed to happen over a 32-year period, there wouldn't be a car made in the entire world. There wouldn't be a radio. There wouldn't be a television. There wouldn't be internet. There wouldn't be anything because magnets are such a part. Now, nobody knows what magnets are.
So yes, almost everything he said there is true. And I think this is super cool because what you have here is the President of the United States trying to communicate to the American people this problem, right? Like we just didn't care about magnets for the last 30 years and now we do. Why, right? This is like this is my dream come true. This was my moment, Okay. Almost everything he said was true. The last part, nobody knows what magnets are. You happen to be in the presence of someone who does. And I will try to share with you a little bit of what I have learned, okay? This is another video. So this is kind of new for me as well. I spent some time making an animation using a package called MANM, which you may have heard of. So I'm going to take you through how to understand magnetization and demagnetization so that you can understand some of the samples and the measurements we've taken, okay? So here is a toy model of a magnet. And what you're looking at is two magnetic domains, a red domain and a blue domain. You notice they have these arrows in them, right? Now, it turns out the universe really doesn't like magnets. So they always try to cancel themselves out. That's what you see here, right? They're roughly the same size, and they point in opposite directions. So the net magnetization is 0. The universe does not like magnets. It tries to get rid of them, okay? And we as magnet engineers, we want to get rid of that. We want there to actually be magnetism in the sample. So we want to preference one of the regions over the other. And we have to do that by activating it. And we activate it by bringing another magnet up to it. So it's going to get kind of confusing here, right? We have the magnetic sample, and we're going to bring another magnet up to it to magnetize it. Does that make sense? And so there's a little yellow applied magnetic field label there. A little yellow arrow is going to appear, and it's going to get bigger. And it'll tell you the direction and the size of the applied field that we're going to put on the material. And that's going to be H, okay? And the response, the magnetization of the material is going to be M, right? And I'll take you through what it looks like to activate the magnet. So as we start to apply the field, you see now that we have a yellow arrow. One of those two regions has grown at the expense of the other, and a little yellow border has started to move. That little border is called the magnetic domain wall, and it's very relevant for my research, so pay attention. Okay? What we will typically do is find out how much total magnetization we can get out of a sample. So we will apply an external field until it starts to plateau. So if you look at the plot at the bottom, you'll see it starts to plateau. That tells us that we've basically made the whole magnet into one domain. Right? You see there's red completely dominates here. Right? And then what we'll do is we'll slowly decrease the strength of that applied field. And remember, the physics wants to demagnetize the material. So the blue region will come back. But usually, in most materials, it doesn't go back to where it started from. That little dotted line shows you where it was when it was demagnetized, right? If I let it go to 0 applied external field, it usually stops a little bit short. See, the red region is bigger than where we started. And you'll see that there's no longer any yellow arrow. This is called the remnants magnetization, MR. It is the y-intercept in the plot, the y-intercept. That tells us how much magnetization we were able to get out of the material. Okay, the y-intercept, very important. Another question that's very important for us is how hard is it to demagnetize the material? Like, how hard do I have to push to get the yellow line to go back to where it started from? Usually you have to apply a little bit of a field in the opposite direction. See that? Just a little bit of field, and we demagnetize the material. That's not good, right? If you want a permanent magnet, you don't want it to be easy to demagnetize. Okay, so we want a really large x-intercept. This is the x-intercept, how hard it is to demagnetize. And we want a really large y-intercept, which is how much magnetization we were able to achieve. When we do these measurements, we typically go the full cycle. Okay, so we'll go all the way in the negative with the external applied field and all the way in the positive. And it gives us a loop-looking thing. Okay? These are what we measure in the lab. And it tells us most of the important stuff magnetically about our samples. The X and the Y intercept, okay? We want them to be big. Here is an example of one of the data points that we took, or one of the loops. So this sample is made of manganese and aluminum. That's pretty cool because manganese and aluminum are not rare earth materials. You heard the president mention rare earths. These are relatively cheap, or at least manganese used to be relatively cheap until the battery people like Kincaid started using manganese in their cathodes. Now the forecast price of manganese has increased, but it's still relatively cheap. And the other cool thing about manganese and aluminum is that they're not even magnetic elements. And yet we get magnetism. And another cool thing about this is that this is the first time it was probably ever made in the state of Idaho. It was done by a colleague of mine named Shane Palmer, who some of you may have known. And we were really excited about it because it showed that we could actually make this material here in our labs with the instruments that we have. And it's a new research project for our lab. So we got really excited about it. Now you'll notice there's a couple things about it that are not so great. The x-intercept is quite small. I think it's 0.01 roughly Tesla. And the y-intercept is also quite small. I think at about 10 kiloamps per meter. So not very great. It's not a good permanent magnet right now, but we at least demonstrated we could get ferromagnetism. Here's another model. This time, it's basically the same. All I've done is put in some defects, okay, little spheres. And what those basically act as is a kind of friction to the motion of the yellow wall as it moves through. And what's really advantageous about that is that when the sample is trying to demagnetize itself, it can get stuck on those defects. And what that does is it increases our y-intercept. And to get back to the starting spot, we have to push past those defects, which also requires more external field. So we increase our x-axis as well. I'm going to keep going. You go all the way around. And you get a much wider loop. And so when I saw this data point, I became very, 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 very excited. It was done by one of our REU students. And when he showed me this result, I started dancing around HML 103. I'm not joking, I did that. And it was because how wide it is. It's about 0.3 instead of 0.01. It's a lot better. You'll notice that it's not as tall, right? It's only 15 here. It's like there's almost no magnetic phase that was made in this, but we had a lot of coercivity. I got very excited about it. And what he did was he added indium. And the work that I've done since then, it's about 2 years of work, is to try to get past that. So on the right side for you guys, you'll see the work that we've done. The little gray one, you can barely even see it. But that previous loop that I showed you, the really wide one, you can see it in there. It's just about as wide as the black one, which is the more recent work. But we've been able to get a lot more height out of it. And on the left, you'll see the SEM micrograph that shows you those little spheres that are in there, right? In the white, you see those bright regions? Those are little nanoprecipitates of indium, which are acting to kind of act as friction for the motion of the domain walls and increase the width. So we're really excited about this. We're making rare earth-free permanent magnets here at Boise State in the Magnetic Materials Lab and helping solve the big magnet problem facing the United States. Thank you all.
All right, well, hey everyone, my name is Nico Yensen. I'm a third-year grad student in Dr. Brian Jaquis's lab, and today we're going to talk about future nuclear fuels and their synthesis and characterization. So I think this is probably a pretty familiar picture there of Gemini. I think we can all agree that AI has pretty much taken the world by storm, and one aspect of AI that we don't talk about too often is the energy demands of AI for the data centers that power this. These data centers, back in 2018, we can see that there was about 1.9% of the US total was devoted to the data centers. That's increased to 4.4 when the study was done in 2023. And then there's projected another 8% or so increase for the next few years. So to power this, we need a stable baseline energy. Now, we're going to shift gears a little bit, but not really, because have you ever boiled water? I think we all have, and I think we can also say that a nuclear power plant essentially does this. It's not really true, but you know, essentially the fission reaction heats water, which then goes to a steam generator, powers a turbine, powers a generator, and then that gives us our electricity. Now, my research is more concerned with some of the work done in the core. So let's take a closer look at that. We have inside the core, we have a giant reactor pressure vessel, and then we have fuel assemblies. Let's take a closer look at those. So inside the fuel assemblies, we have a variety of tubes, super long tubes, called surrounded by cladding, and inside that, we have nuclear fuel pellets. So as you probably remember from 30 seconds ago, the focus of the talk is on these nuclear fuels. So the current baseline for the entire fleet is uranium dioxide. We are looking at a substitute for that called uranium mononitride. Some of the advantages of this are this boasts about 155% increase in the thermal conductivity. We care about this because this either gives us a higher safety margin by better cooling, or it also allows us to drive the temperature of the reactor up and gives us better efficiency. We also see about a 39% increase for UN over UO2 for the uranium density. This essentially allows us to pack more uranium into the same volume, which then allows us to have a longer time period between refueling, thereby saving time and energy, or time and cost. So in my lab, we are looking at this material, and we have 3 different projects that I want to give you a quick dive into about how we're studying this and aiming to resolve the issues that we're talking about. So one is comparing 2 different synthesis routes for UN. The comparison of thermophysical properties and chemical properties between 2 synthesis routes, one which starts with the current feedstock for the fleet UO2, giving us UN, and then another one that starts with uranium metal, which then also gives us UN. So let's take a quicker look at that. So as I said, we have UO2, and we mix this with carbon, and then we put this into a tube furnace, as seen there on the left, and then this produces UN, which then we can take that powder and form those nuclear fuel pellets in the furnace on the right. And these are the actual furnaces in my lab. The other technique uses uranium metal still into the same tube furnace, which then gives us UN, and then we can use that again to sinter. So our goal is to look at the characteristics of these. So at a broad overview, we have the synthesis route A gives us carbon and oxygen impurities because we are mixing carbon in deliberately. We also get to utilize pre-existing manufacturing pathways, which is a big bonus. However, the other technique, B, gives us low carbon and oxygen impurities, which is very favorable for the properties of the resulting fuel pellets. However, a downside is that the synthesis technique results in very fine powder, which can ignite in contact with oxygen, thus proving an extra hurdle to overcome in terms of the handling and the synthesis. So shifting gears a little bit, there's going to be a variety of things that we find as we go through this process, and we already see some in literature. The list of pros and cons is a lot longer, but it's exciting to be able to dive in and figure out more pros and cons as we continue this work. So zooming out, if you remember synthesis route A, and I said we introduced carbon into that, we're interested in the effect of the carbon on that synthesis route and the resulting properties of the UN there. So in this study, we have 3 different carbon sources that all have varying amounts of crystallinity or the particle size as well. So looking at this, this gives you a little bit closer look at that synthesis route. We are mixing carbon into the UO2. This gets mixed with the ball mill, put that into the furnace, and then we follow a profile at high temperature, and we go from, is this it? Yes, we go from this where we have 1 carbon source plus the UO2 and another carbon source. And in this comparative study, we've just put these both in, and then we got these resulting differences in the UN. So this study is looking at studying the differences between these 2. Now, a third study is one of the issues with uranium nitride is its corrosion behavior. And previous studies have seen that compositing that with varying amounts of uranium diboride can help mitigate some of those corrosion behaviors. So we have an opportunity to characterize these materials. So in this study, we first start the characterization process. We have a fuel pellet, or a fuel pellet size pellet, at least. And then this gets sliced up. We looked at the different faces under SEM, and we started to notice something as we started prepping these samples, that we started getting this coring effect. And under SEM, we discovered that this was really due to a difference in the porosity, which is interesting because we were not expecting this, but this was also seen in other studies. So something that we're doing is looking a little bit closer at this and trying to understand if there's any differences in phases, or if this affects the properties even. Now, in order to continue characterizing, we use a variety of instruments. The last images I showed you were taken on this scanning electron microscope. This can also give us chemical data, which is then really useful when combined with X-ray diffraction, which helps determine the exact phases that are present. We also have light element analysis, which can tell us the oxygen and nitrogen content in these samples. We use simultaneous thermal analysis. If you could see the bottom of that, that would say that it gives you heat capacity data. We also have laser flash analysis, which gives you thermal diffusivity data. If you combine these two, you can get that thermal conductivity, which relates back to that original graph that I showed, that helps us see the improvement of the UN over the UO2, if you recall that. And then finally, rounding out the thermal properties, we can do dilatometry. That gives us the coefficient of thermal expansion. So overall, we can use all of these techniques in order to help us understand the effect of the compositing on the nuclear fuel. Now, so this gives you a brief overview of the different studies and projects that we have going on in our lab, which then lend us the ability to understand these fuels better, which then gives us the ability to relate back to the nuclear fuel pellet that goes in the rod, goes into the fuel assemblies, which goes into their core, which goes into the nuclear power plant, which then lets you do your searches with AI. So thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Miranda Nelson. I am a student, a fifth-year PhD candidate in the ANML, Dr. Estrada's lab. I'm kind of a secret agent because I'm actually part of the BME program. But my research is very, very materials related, and I will tell you why. But first, let's try a little experiment. So today, you all are going to be my lab mice. I will be the researcher. Don't worry, I'll take very good care of you. You'll get the best food, a really cozy place to stay, better healthcare than most grad students, all the works. But you have been genetically modified to have cancer, so sorry about that. Don't worry, I have a really great treatment that I'm going to test on you. So this half of the room, mostly because my boss is over here, will be the treatment group. And you guys will be the placebo group, the control group. Don't worry, the placebo is totally as good. So let's see how this goes. All right, we're going to use quality of life as a measurement. This is a measurement that is used in animal studies, although it's very complex for me to tell you now. But basically, it's how good your life is going, how much pain you're in. The thing you really need to know about this, though, is that if your quality of life dips down too low, I will have to ethically, humanely euthanize you. Okay? So just pay attention to that. But all right, after a little bit of time, maybe everybody's quality of life is going down a little bit. You all have cancer. Sorry. Things are going. Treatment group. Hey, this is going pretty good. Things are looking up. Control group. Uh-oh, this is getting pretty low. Yeah, actually, I did have to euthanize you guys, but don't worry. The treatment group went great. We're having really great, awesome results. Like this drug has some really great promise. Although I did actually have to euthanize you guys as well, so I could finish my studies. Yeah, but thank you all for your participation. Science, thanks you for your sacrifice. Yeah, so this is the world of animal testing. How many people here have ever taken a medicine? Raise your hand. Yeah, everybody, right? Vaccines to ibuprofen have all had some kind of animal testing. I'm not saying I'm anti-animal testing. It has its place. In a lot of countries, it's legally required for drugs to be tested through animal trials. You know, but there are problems, issues, things to consider. Are the health of all these humans, these scientific advances, worth what we're putting these animals through? Maybe, maybe not. This is a long debate that's been going on for a long time. But on the other hand, these scientific advances also help the animals, right? Would it be ethical for scientists to go directly to human trials? I don't know, probably not. On the other hand, too, when we talk about drug testing, 92% of drugs that pass animal trials will not make it through human trials. This figure is a little misleading, but I do not have enough time to tell you why. But, you know, there's lots of reasons for this. You know, species difference. You know, humans aren't mice most of the time. So we have different organs, you know, different hormone systems. Animals do provide a pretty good model for us to develop these treatments, but it's not 100% perfect. But all of these are reasons why, as a research community, you may not know this, but you're a part of it too, we are moving towards less animal testing. So how are we going to do that? Through bioprinting, which is what I work on. So bioprinting could and already has led to reductions in animal testing, where we can take cells, print out using a 3D printer that's similar to a traditional 3D printer, tissues that replicate human tissues or organs, so we can test our treatments there instead of on mice, rats, dogs, non-human primates. And in the future, potentially, this work could develop so much so that it replaces animal testing altogether. So what is a bioink? A bioink is what we're printing out, right? Just like an ink is what we print on a normal printer, bioink, we're print on our bioprinter. So typically it's a hydrogel, a water-based polymer, to be simple, and cells, that's the bio part. Great. Although biology is complicated, it doesn't quite work like that as well as we hope. Most of the polymers and bioinks we have are weaker or less conductive. They're not matching our native tissue, so we're not getting these tissue types that we're aiming for. Why is this? Well, we have to go back to stem cells. Everybody has stem cells. There are these really awesome cells in our body that will eventually turn into a different type of cell. Fat cells, neurons, muscle, all of them, right? How does the body do this? How do the cells know what to turn into? We don't quite know yet. We have a pretty good idea. We're not 100% sure. Biology is complicated, although it is something we all do every day, well, for the most part. As scientists, we're still trying to figure that out. But we know for the most part, it boils down to environmental cues, biochemical cues, and DNA priming. So as bioprinters, we are going to look at these environmental cues. How can we make this environment the best it can be to get these cells to turn into our target tissue? Well, we've looked at lots of different hydrogels, lots of different polymers, kind of running into some stoppages there. We want our environment to be stronger and we want it to be more conductive. That's where nanomaterials come in. These materials are much stronger, much more conductive than the hydrogels, but so they will lend those properties to the gel. And as I've shown in my latest work, especially Maxine, titanium carbide will make a stronger hydrogel compared to the plain ink, and also a more conductive hydrogel. Does that mean we'll have a better ability to grow skeletal muscle or whatever tissue we're targeting? That's what the next steps are for. But overall, bioprinting unlocks, a replacement to animal testing, or at least a reduction of it. This type of work is incredibly important, not only to healthcare, but to all the other work that goes on in this building. If we still had, TB, malaria, things like that, it'd be pretty hard for us to do the work we do because most of us wouldn't be alive. So these advances are really essential to the work that goes on all around us. But not only could it help with drug testing and development, it could also go on to become more personalized medicine, right? We could test a drug specifically for you to see if that you're allergic to it before you even try it. Also, it could even expand to the world of tissue or organ replacements. I didn't get into it, but the organ shortage is a giant problem across the world. And not only that, finding an organ that matches your immune system is a whole nother problem. So bioprinting and using materials to advance bioprinting is a very important issue. Thank you.
Yes. Can you hear me? Yeah, you should. Otherwise, open your ears. Okay, sorry. I'm like this, sorry. Not sorry. So, laughing is good, and I'm here to make you laugh. Is it not fun? It will be fun. So, the title itself defines everything. Why I choose this title? Human battery bringing Frankenstein into the 21st century. What is Frankenstein? Let's talk about this in the next slide. So these are two images which define the human civilization from today, from the beginning and today. First evolution of the human history, fire. How did we create fire? Change everything. We used to eat something else, we bring something else. Now we have good food, hamburger. Oh my God, fantastic. But then Frankenstein, electricity. Why I put this image? This is very fascinating image, which I really like. I never watched this movie, by the way. I watched the new one, which came like 2 months ago on Netflix. And the Frankenstein came into life, this like beautiful tower, the scientist created in Norway somewhere, and that used electricity from the sky. Why the sky electricity, which we already observe every day in our life? Thunderstorms, not here, but somewhere. Why this electricity? What is the resource of this electricity, and how it's generating this much voltage? We can create a monster. Well, I cannot create monster in our lab. Professor Estrada will not allow my paperwork, and the safety department is too hard to get through on it. So not create the monster, let's create something else. This is contact electrification. This happens everywhere, every time. Right now, I am still doing contact electrification. John was working here, there is using mechanical energy, converting, tapping. Also, when I was a kid, I used to do a funny thing. Someone told me, I rub the pencil on my hair and try to turn on the page of the book. This is contact electrification. And how this can be converted into the electricity. Not on big scale, but on tiny scale. And that tiny scale can change everything because we are material scientists, works on nanomaterial, nanoenergies. So this thing, these two zap, you must have probably seen in your daily life every day. You try to open the milk door in Walmart or somewhere else, and you feel that tiny spark. That is contact electrification. In winter, when you try to open your car door and you feel, oh my God, what the hell is this? This is contact electrification, which we feel every day in our life. And that energy can be used as electricity and can turn lot of things in our daily life, which I will talk in this presentation today. So why this contact electrification is important? What is this? What is TANG? TANG is trivoelectric nanogenerators, which I already said. We need tiny things. We work on tiny things, tiny generators. Trivoelectricity is nothing. Every day, again, contact electrification. When two materials come in contact and go away each other, we generate electricity. That electricity is basically known as triboelectricity. It works in 4 different ways. If you try to slap someone, it's single electrode. If you try to run somewhere, it's lateral sliding mode or freestanding mode. But if you try to fight with someone and 2 materials are coming contact like this, it is vertical contact separation mode or horizontal contact separation mode, can be defined in many ways. But why I'm talking about this today? What is the biggest source of energy? Right now, someone talk about nuclear energy, magnets, other thing, lot of things. But we forgot one thing: we are humans, and we have a lot of energy in it. I'm drinking coffee. I do drink coffee every day. Most probably in one day, I will drink more than Dr. Dave. Let's see, that day will come or not. That's the future thing. And I love croissant, maybe not better than French people, but yeah. So this guy, in these slides, one guy is drinking coffee, is eating energy. One guy is tapping mobile phone. This is mechanical energy wastage. One guy is running, it's again mechanical energy. Human being itself is a source of mechanical energy, and we want to utilize this energy in our daily life. If you are John and you are too active, you can generate 5 to 6 kilojoule of energy. But if you are like me, you can generate 20 kilojoule because I'm more active than him. So why I'm telling about this to mechanical energy? Human beings itself is a good source of mechanical energy, and that energy can be utilized and turn lot of tiny transistors or tiny things or electronic devices for our daily life. Dr. Z.L. Wang, who was the pioneer of this work, well, this energy existed from Greeks and Hindus times, long time ago. People used to use this energy to check the quality of silk for other thing. But in today's time, Dr. Z.L. Wang from Georgia Tech, he rediscovered this thing and wanted to utilize in our daily life. So according to him, it's not mine, 8 billion people on this earth, and if you could utilize 1% of the waste mechanical energy like we are drinking and I'm still walking around, it's my mechanical energy, we can turn on billions of transistors in this internet of era where everything is becoming tiny, going to your skin, everything. But I will talk about more on this tattoos. Why this tattoo? These are not the same tattoo which you cannot get when you were a kid and your cousin got one tattoo and your mother was like, no, you cannot have tattoo. Now you can have tattoo, and these tattoos are useful and can be removable too. And these functionalized material, I use two material to make this tattoo. One is PVBVA. It's very hard to remember. Polyvinyl butyl, co-vinyl alcohol, co-vinyl acetate. It's the polymer. I will not say this again. Just say PVBVA. And the maxine, which Miranda just mentioned. How simple it is. You have polymer everywhere around you, and you just take one more material and bring together, and okay, oh, fantastic, you have tattoo. Why I say this tattoo? Because I don't have tattoo. My parents will not allow me to get one, but one day I will take one. So these are the tattoos you can attach on your skin directly. It's very simple. In this video, you can see I attach the tattoo on my skin because the PVBVA make van der Waals force with the protein of skin, and it's attached up to there. PVBVA does not dissolve in water, so it's very good for the human attachable, and it's biocompatible. We have published articles on this, so we can claim right now. It's come off very easily. Think about it. You can just remove anywhere, anytime, and it's fantastic. You can have tattoos, and you can even tease your cousins, hey, I have better tattoo than you. Your tattoo does not do anything but converts my mechanical motion into energy. And it does not come off with water. So if you are in a club and you want to remove your tattoo, just use the alcohol you are drinking to remove it, and it came off very easily. So 2 problems solved. So how this thing work? As I said, 2 materials come in contact and just go away. But if you just repeat this continuously, it's like how fast you do, it's like a toxic relation. Let's go in this way. How fast you can fight with your partner, that more electricity you generate in this case. So friction, power, tapping, or frequency, everything matters, how much voltage you can generate. You can, in this case, we generate 250 volt just by like this, just a simple tap on your device, 250 volt. But if you repeat this, you can turn that electricity into some useful way. Okay, sorry, I put this in back. So what actually happens here, when this material, your skin, come in contact with the material, the electrons jumps from your skin to material, in the electron cloud wall in the left-hand side down to the PVBVA, and the cycles goes repeat continuously, and you have continuous source of electricity. Like you are utilizing yourself as a source of electricity, the humans. Still, I have 2 minutes. So as I said, you can turn on LEDs. Here in this case, I'm just tapping this and I can glow 5 LEDs. I can glow more. In the previous work, we have glow more than 50 LEDs. No, more than 35 LEDs, sorry. And this is very useful. Even you can glow these kind of LEDs in future if you grow the area and utilize the same thing. But if you attach this on your skin and you try to say, just tap it, just think about it. Your body itself continuously in motion, and your sensors are on your body, and you can turn on the sensors just by utilizing your body. You don't need any battery and a connectivity or anything. Or think more in future someday. You don't need to charge your mobile phone or something else to finding plugs everywhere. Your clothes are the only wires you need on your body, basically in future, not today. So this image, one is generated by left-hand side is generated by AI, and AI triboelectricity spelling and nanogenerator spelling is not good still. So the whole conclusion is just tap your finger and you have everything. So we cannot create monster in our lab, but we can create tiny generators, and you are itself can utilize your energy to do something. This is my research, but I will take one more moment to explain more. Science cannot do alone. We need a team. And fortunately, I was very lucky. I got the best team which I can imagine. Whole admin department, whole my team, ANML, fantastic people. Ask us, we will help you, but not always. And the vaccine, we synthesize vaccine, and we have the best vaccine. I claim it, and I take it, and it's my word. We have the best vaccine in Boise. Not all, okay? In Boise. So that's my guess. Thank you. If you have any questions.
Okay, let's have all of our speakers come back up to the front here. We'll have about 30 seconds for questions. Now, while we're asking some questions, Sierra's going to pull up a QR code, and we would like you to vote for your favorite, most entertaining, whatever metric you want to apply presentation for this afternoon's event. Questions? I have a question for Ajay. What is the total amount of energy in units of calories that are going to be required to power all the electronics that I need to power with my own body? And is it cheaper to pay for the electricity or for the food I'm going to need to eat?
I think that's a good question. I have no conclusive evidence to claim anything right now, but I think it's going to be cheaper in future, not now. So
hopefully food costs will go down.
Yeah, but we have to buy the food anyway. That's a good.
Well, I'm going to require more food.
No. Why? You are already eating food and you just have attached sensor on your body. So you have to go to work, you have to take shower, you have to do eating food.
All my clothes are going to be a lot colder.
No.
Because I'm constantly having to power.
We can improve that to something else.
All right, other questions? Questions for sodium ion batteries, questions for bioprinting, questions for nuclear fuels.
Kincaid, the 6-7 comparison with P2 and P3, I didn't understand. P2 has 6-fold rotational symmetry, but P3 doesn't have a 7 in it crystallographically.
I just remember from the TED Talks when I was a kid, they always included those popular memes. But you're completely correct. You're completely correct. I'm sure I could think of something.
John, your RU student made that ferromagnet that was cool. What's the throughput for making and testing a new magnet, and how do you choose which recipes to try?
Whoa. Well, there's a couple of questions there. I don't think I can speak to that throughput question at all. But as for the selection of the materials that we selected, we were really focused on, well, we had learned that gallium alloyed into our system very well, and it gave us really great results. So we started looking at, and gallium and aluminum are very electronically similar. They belong to the same group. So we said, why don't we try some of the other elements in that same group? And so we tried boron and indium, and indium turned out to be very promising.
Nico, you said that you didn't expect the porosity, but it was seen in other studies. Why didn't you expect it?
I think I meant overall, we don't expect to see that even in the other studies. It just hasn't been directly studied, that phenomenon in particular. Yeah.
Any other questions? I'm going to come over to the room, this side of the room, see if any of our visiting prospective graduate students, you have a chance to grill these students here.
Thank you, everyone, for these really nice talks. John, is there like a magic pattern for defects that can maximize the magnetic properties? And is there a way to realize that by controlling their location?
It's a great question. I'm not totally sure. I don't know that there's an optimal pattern. I do know that there is an optimal size. It's very important for the defects to be of the same size as the width of that domain wall. So the yellow border that was between the red and the blue region has it actually is not, it has a dimensionality to it. And the defects need to be of the same size as that thickness in order for them to work effectively. If they're too large, no good. Could actually be bad.
Well, one last question for Dr. Eckler.
Hi, Miranda. How many different tissues could you print at once?
It's a great question. The limitation of how many tissues or cell types or you could print at once comes down to the capabilities of your printer. Our printer right now, personally, I could print 3 different at the same time because I have 3 different print heads. They have bioprinters now that can hold up to 12 different bioinks at the same time. Like organ systems, of course, are multiple tissues. Work right now is more on the tissue level. So a single tissue, but a skin graft with just skin cells probably wouldn't actually be that effective, right? You would be missing sweat glands, hair follicles, things like that that are all surprisingly important.
Thank you to all of our student presenters for being so bold to come up here and do this experiment. And thank you to 41 of the 42 audience members who voted here. We have our winner for today's most unforgettable performance. Kincaid Graff will receive our prize for today, but we'd like to thank all of the students for... And thank you. I think we're out of time. So with that, hopefully if you enjoyed this, we'll try to do it again in the future. So please let us know and have a great weekend.